welcome to Stampscaping 101. Seems like after I've been off a few days, it feels like I haven't stamped for 2 months, but I don't know, that's always the way it is. Okay, I have a stamp sketch here that was done probably a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to finish this off. Okay, so we're going to do this one in fall tones. We're getting a little past fall right now and moving into winter, but I figured maybe one or two last fall types of scenes before the end of that season. I am picking out some colors that I think might be good fall types of tones right here. Okay, now one of the things that I like to do is I like to pick out some really pale values of those colors for the most part. And that's what I'm going to push on here. Now, I'm going to try to do this one a little bit differently. We usually see fall types of colors with a lot of contrasting or complementary blues up in the sky. Okay, but I want to do this one like it's a sunset or something like that. So I don't know. I just don't see too many of those fall types of depictions at that time of day. I don't know. Just blue really goes really well with it, and that's, I don't know. That's my inclination. But just to do something different, I figured I'm going to do kind of a sunset type of sky. These are alcohol pens right here. So if I lay down some alcohol inks in here, that's not going to be good if I want to stamp some dye-based ink impressions up here. All right. So that being said, what we're going to do is we're going to finish off any type of stamping first, especially if we're going to do it in dye-based inks. Okay, now I don't have a lot of colors in pigment inks, okay, so I have to use my dye-based pens for this. So what I'm going to do, the stamping for the most part is done, but I want to get some additional dye-based ink impressions in the sky with kind of a fall foliage type of color scheme. I still want these to be reasonably dark because they're going to represent foreground and kind of a I don't know, a shaded type of element. Okay, now the reason why I do that, it's not for some sort of I don't know, theoretical notion of what these leaves should look like. It's more of a visual one. When you have something dark like this, it creates space between your foreground and your background. Okay, so usually things in the foreground when I'm working with dye-based inks, lighter things are in the distance and darker things are in the foreground. Okay, it's just easy. That's just the easiest way to work. And I don't know, that's also what kind of it looks like out in nature, because things at a distance, you know, the light is reflecting off of it and then it has to go through a lot of, you know, sediment in the air, molecules of moisture, you know, the light gets broken up. So, that being said, if there's a pine tree or some kind of tree that's 10 feet from you, if there's another one that's a mile away, chances are it's going to look lighter in value because of that kind of atmospheric, you know, type of breaking up of the that light, reflected light. Okay, so light things in the distance, darker values closer. Okay, so see, then I'm just getting a little hint of some color up there, okay? I mean, I'm going to put some extra colors in there anyway, but we'll just go for that right now. Okay, so that's just about it. I mean, the rest of the images are just stamped in black. Okay. When you're using pens like that, you're really getting a lot of ink on your stamp like that, and it's really kind of puddled on the surface, even when you are dealing with a pretty porous surface, and this one happens to be the everyday digital white-coated silk paper, which is very absorbent. Nonetheless, Marvy 1500 series markers are very, very juicy. Probably the juiciest pens out there. Okay, so, just in general, okay, now, a lot of times when people are dealing with outline styles of designs, okay, there might be a tree and it might look more like a cloud or something, okay? So what it looks like is, it might look something like this, it's like a Charlie Brown tree or something like that, okay? I like, outline designs too, by the way, or Charlie Brown stuff, so this isn't putting that down, but they might think about coloring it in uniformly like that as a whole space. But on my trees, what I do is I create volumes in them, okay? So there's lighter areas and there's darker areas in them, okay? So by and large, we're going to color everything with a light color, but when I start moving into the darker tones, I'm coloring in those darker areas, okay? And then what we'll do is we'll go back with a lighter pen, because these are alcohol, and when you go back in with like a blender pen, you can kind of remove some inks, and then I'll be removing inks in those lighter areas, so we'll retain that sense of, I don't know, kind of a three-dimensional space, when we're dealing with light and shadow. And then we'll do it throughout, this area down here as well, okay? All right, so how do you do that? It's really easy, and you can do it with colored pencils, you can do it with markers, you can do it with charcoals, whatever, pastels, okay? Now, when I do it with my pens, there's different ways to do it too, and there's probably, a lot better ways to do it. I don't know. This is just I tend to kind of apply things the way I learned in school. We don't work with markers. I don't know, designers and industrial designers were the pen experts, but I am just going to apply. Whoa! Now see, I picked up some of that red from the branch impression, so I didn't mean to go that dark in there. This is pretty light. It's almost like white, in fact. Okay, so just going over with this right here, I am smearing out some of that wet ink, yes, but I don't know, pink's a lighter version of red, so it's all related anyway. Okay. So see this, I'm coloring the whole thing like that. I don't like that really bright pinkish tone, but so be it. Okay. So we have that like so. Okay. So I've colored in basically all of my trees. When I start to kind of differentiate darks and lights, it's more around my mid-tone colors. Okay, now here's kind of more of a warm tan. It has a little bit of yellow in it. It's like a pale orange, okay? So you can go over the whole thing still. Now this is still light enough where I'm going to, this is kind of related to, both the foliage, okay, of the trees and the brown of the covered bridge. We'll just say this covered bridge is not a painted style one, okay? Okay, now this one's fairly light, and if you've seen my other videos where I do some colors with inking, and I'm talking about kind of laying down a foundation color of maybe a warm tone like a distress ink antique linen. This is kind of similar to an antique linen. It's just a warm tone. It's kind of like in oil painting, I always mention how we learn to lay down kind of a base coat color with, like a burnt umber or a sepia was a big one. Okay, so that's kind of like a warm tone. So we have those types of colors now in pens. We have a vast range of colors to choose from. Okay, all right. So moving on. We'll move up into, a little bit of a warm tone. It's quite a bit darker, right? And I'll apply this to my bridge. I'll go on the inside of the bridge too. It's a little bit, orangish, but I don't want that. But this is just one color. Okay. Now, I plan to use some oranges in my trees and whatnot, so I'll go ahead and apply some of this up in there as well. Now, we're starting to get a little bit darker too. Okay. So I won't apply it everywhere. I applied it in a pretty good area, though. Okay, this is yellow. It's a little bit more of an orangish yellow. This is getting really too bright for me, okay? But I'll mellow this all out, okay? That's one good thing about, working with alcohol pens, right? We have our blender pens and whatnot, okay? So, that looks crazy and really terrible if that were kind of the end, color that we're applying on. Okay, now this is a brownish gray. So I'm going to apply that right over this kind of orangish tinge on my bridge here. Okay, I'll apply it, I'll apply it in a pretty good area, but we'll also apply this in our trees as well, okay? It still looks crazy, and it's going to look crazy for, quite some time. I know it doesn't look like it's going to work at all. In fact, when I get doing these, sometimes I'm wondering, I don't know about that. And the thought has crossed my mind a little bit with this piece. All right. So I wonder about that type of thing too, but I just know that there are things that I'm going to be applying in here. You know what I mean? I can go light after I go darker than what I really want, okay? Because I do have things like the paint pens that I can use on here that I didn't used to have before, at my disposal because, acrylic paint pens just weren't out there at the time. Or, I don't know, I just wasn't aware of certain brands or something like that. Or, they're so cheap now that, I don't even think about purchasing them. I don't know. But there's a lot of other media out there these days that are just so fantastic for our purposes. Okay, that's a lot of orange in there, right? Okay, now it might be time to start going back and kind of removing some of that. Well, I tell you what, let's go all the way to red while we're at it, okay? I'm usually kind of chicken with red because it's just so bright, okay? I'm usually, I don't know, it's an intimidating color to use at times just because of the value, in terms of light and dark of it, and intensity, the relative bright and dull of it. It's just so intense, And the more intense something is, the more something stands out, potentially, kind of the harder it is to kind of to handle because it is just such a standout hue, value. Okay, so this is a little bit more brown. I'm kind of developing the bridge somewhat, okay? Now, well, let's go in there with a little bit more brown right here too, okay? See how kind of going darker on the sides makes the rooftop stand out more in terms of being top lit. Okay, we're going back in with a lighter tone, and I'm going to kind of start to blend some of these colors. Okay, now I have enough of a buildup of colors, okay, of ink, I should say, so that when I applied my red in there, I was applying red over the top of, several other layers of color. So it didn't really, I don't think it's penetrating and coming into contact with the paper. So when I try to remove it, I'm using my lighter tone, okay, almost like a blender pen. I like using color for my blending rather than just, the clear blender pen. Now, sometimes I do use that blender pen, but I just assume stay with the color scheme that I'm blending, okay? You might as well use a color within that color scheme. Because I don't necessarily want the white of the paper, and to use the blender pen like a bleaching kind of instrument. Okay, so see, this is kind of, as I do this, it's kind of puddling and it's putting the red back into solution. It's almost like melting it away. That's the way, I don't know, I came to start using alcohol pens way back when. I even used some rubbing alcohol, on a Q-tip to kind of puddle my alcohol inks and to get that kind of alcohol ink texturing. I know some people get pens and it's like, well, how do they blend? Well, what they're talking about is, do they leave any mark at all? But when I use alcohol pens, I try to get the most amount of marking, that I can get because I love texture. And I love that type of alcohol ink that kind of puddles up and it leaves like a ring. To me, it's like the alcohol ink's version of watercolors, so it makes it look painterly. I'm not necessarily going for the absence of texture. I don't know. I'm always preaching this in my videos, but, kind of this notion that's out there, trying to convince people that, the absence of texture and kind of making something look mechanically printed, with absolutely no, kind of semblance of, being handmade, is, I don't know, it baffles me. Okay, so see that? We got a big, huge range of things, colors back there and whatnot. That's not what we're going after, though, okay? I'm still going, that's like my foundation right there for other colors to come. Okay, so that being said, let's start to do some treatments down here in the grassy area, okay? I don't know if we'd see so much of this green, with a kind of a sunsetty type of color scheme, but what the heck, we need a little bit of contrast in here, between the trees and the, I don't know, the more meadowy area. But that being said, I am using some of my yellow down here. This isn't by no means expert coloring. I am not I wouldn't even call myself a good colored pencil user, okay? I'm just, I don't know, I use it in a certain fashion that suits my purposes, okay? Which means that, I don't know, it's kind of more like, I do what I can with it, and then I use other techniques over the top of it that kind of bring it all together. But, I'm having to use those other techniques as kind of, just to make it kind of work, all right? So this is like in my road, I'm adding this kind of brown tones in here and whatnot. But I'm also kind of leaving some areas of white light like that, okay? We need a little bit of white in there, so don't remove all of that. We're going to be doing some effects with white, so we need to retain a little bit of white in there, okay, at least. All right, so, I want this area in here to be a little bit more of a kind of a graceful transition between grass, so I'm trying to build up some ink right here that's thick enough to where it starts to kind of, I don't know, blend in a little bit and merge and maybe lift even. Okay, so that is that. Okay, now on this one, I have to decide what kind of sunset type of, quality I want up there. I tell you what, I think that's going to be easier to do with some dye-based inks. So Let's see here. What do we have? Let's go with, you guys like distressing a lot, I think. And so do I. I'm getting really, really vibrant in tones, okay, with my colors up in this area. So that being said, I think I'm going to go with a fairly dull, okay, as dull as a sunset can be, type of thing going on in the sky. So here's some antique linen, you know, color that I was talking about earlier. As a matter of fact, maybe I'll get a little bit of this down here too. Okay, and I'll even have it in my water. Okay, I'm going to have more of like a sunsetty. Okay, now my inkers or my pens are still, my pen impressions are still a little bit juicy, and I'm getting some smearing up there. Okay, so I tell you what, I'm just going to use some re-inker fluid on my paper towel. And let's get that little smooth out there. And I'm going to dab here instead of streak, because the streaks really kind of, you know, are smearing my, applications up there. Don't worry about that, though. I will try to blend that in. We'll see if I can do that. Okay, so see this right here? I am applying that in like so. I'm going to leave a little tiny horizon of white, though. Okay? We're going to need that white in here, believe it or not. Okay? So that's just like this horizon glow up there. You see that? Okay? Now let's move on to mustard seed. Okay? Just some kind of yellowish tone. You know, we're going to have to warm up the sky somewhat. So we'll bring some of this in here. It's turning pretty yellow. It's looking more like a, I don't know, like sunset or twilight. You know, that's what we're going after here. Okay, bringing some of this down into my area down here. That's, you know, that's applying over the top of that alkyl ink pretty good. I do definitely see the influence of this color being applied, so I don't know, that's a good thing. A lot of times, you know, you can't, I don't know, if it gets really thick, I don't think it's like going to apply on those trees, but I guess if there's a thin enough layer of, you know, color in some areas, it doesn't have any problem, you know, applying to a thin layer of alcohol, you know, water over alcohol. Okay? Alright. So there's that. And it's starting to look more, a little bit more sunset-ish. Okay, and let's move over to a walnut stain. Okay, so we're kind of moving back into a color that's a little bit more, or a lot more related to, you know, the first antique linen. You know, yellow kind of bumped it up quite a bit in terms of the intensity level, and definitely temperature level. Okay, it's really a warm tone, but we're layering things like that. Okay. Sometimes this is where people get a little bit, you know, confused. Well, it's not really confused, but they think this process right here, they think it's a lot more complicated, okay? And it's because, you know, you go through these other layers, okay? And sometimes it's hard to imagine what something's going to look like after you apply your first couple colors. It just doesn't look right, okay? And they think, oh my gosh, you know, this is looking all muddy, and you know, the coloring is not right. Well, this doesn't look right, and it hasn't looked right, you know, at all. But what you do is you just keep building it up. You know, it's like, you know, it's like if someone was working on a, you know, kid's birthday cake or something like that, and if you just have the cake in there or something like that, you know, for the frosting and the decorations and all that type of thing. It's not going to look like that until you get all, those types of things on there. Or it doesn't look like a birthday cake until you get the candles on top. So, horrible analogy, but but nevertheless, that's that's the type of thing that we're going after. Someone, if you're baking a cake and you're working up the batter, it's like this doesn't look like you know, then cake, when you're just putting in like the dry ingredients or something like that. But I don't know, that's why people think about cards and art or something like that. It should be, look, a certain degree of resolution, with the first couple colors or something of that sort. But see, I don't know, it's kind of coming together a little bit now in terms of our color scheme and whatnot, Sometimes for me, it's like everything comes together, like, with the last step or something occasionally. And I don't know what this is going to look like either, When I first started doing this, those first couple colors, I'm thinking, I'm not really thinking that it doesn't look very good, but if I was to stop and think, is this happening like I expect it to? If I didn't know any better, okay, I might think no, but I don't know, I don't even think about that anymore. I just kind of keep adding things, okay, and making my assessment as I go. I haven't worked with this like combination of colors before, especially in those trees. I'm just kind of, I don't know. You just have to kind of be a vehicle for, I don't know, some, a certain process. And just kind of watch it as it develops. Don't kind of judge it as it goes along, or try not to. I know we're going to, but I don't know. When you get used to the process or something like that, it's more long. You're just kind of, I don't know. Your experience and whatever, it's just kind of taking you on a ride. And believe me, there's a lot of pieces that I'm working on where, it doesn't look good, I don't know, 70, I don't know what percentage of it is. It's a pretty good percentage, okay? But it's when you just keep working on it. See, I mean, it's starting to come into kind of focus in terms of what it will probably look like, more and more. All right. Okay. I don't know. I don't know. I'm shocked. Now, see, I'm learning something new. I'm shocked that this brown ink, is applying very, very well over the top of the alcohol inks. It might easily rub off. I have no idea. But the thing is, as I spray seal these pieces anyways, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so now, I don't know. I thought I would have to do a lot more alcohol ink work, but I don't think that's going to be necessary. So I'm just going to put those away and get into some paint pen work. And I thought I don't know, I was expecting to do it with my much thicker pens, but maybe I'll do it, in a combination of my extra fine pens and my thicker pens. Okay, so all you do is you just kind of grab, roughly the same color scheme that you applied with your dye-based inks, okay? So what this represents is, you work with a certain color scheme, okay? And you work with them in transparent colors, like these and these. Dye-based inks and alcohol inks are transparent. Now, what I'm working with is more of a opaque color. And, it's translucent opaque, okay? Acrylic paints, okay? And translucent means that you can kind of see through it. It's like looking through frosted glass as opposed to like a clear glass panel. Okay, that's transparent. And, even dark colors, okay? Transparent, you can still see through them. It's like stained glass or something of that sort. Okay, so with paint pens, you always shake them up before you use them. Okay, now this is also, now see, some areas in here, it got very dark, okay, but you can still see the lighter areas in here. So, when you start applying your paint in here, what you're going to do is you're going to apply some and determine that you have to determine what value you're applying is in relation to what you're applying it on top of. So if you apply this pale orange on top of white, it's dark, right? But you might apply this in some areas down in here where there's a darker base layer of that alcohol, and therefore this is light. So you just kind of, this is light in a lot of these areas, so I'm putting it in that lighter area of the tree, and I'll show you what that means here. And it's a loose thing, okay? All right, so see, this is the shadow area right down here, right? This is dark. And depending, now see, this becomes highlights like that. See how that kind of stands out like that? See this down here? And, I mean, what you do is you vary it, okay? So you might put 1 dot there, 3, whatever. But just kind of vary it, okay? That's your kind of main instruction. Don't apply things kind of uniformly, okay? And I have to tell that to myself as well, okay? See that right there? Because remember, we have a lot of other colors to come too, so. And that is the thing that kind of starts to make it look more three-dimensional too, doesn't it? Okay? So that is like this orange here, but here's what I'll do too. Just this area down here is more kind of green, but what you do is you bring some of these little dots down in these areas like this, okay? Just so that there's somewhat of a relate. I mean, you can't even really see these dots very well, but it kind of reads. It'll read kind of on a subconscious level for those looking at this. It gives it something, in common with another area, okay? Just so that it's not this color up here and this color down here, completely different color scheme. If I reuse some of this green down here in the grass, why not bring some of it up here in the trees too, okay? It doesn't mean you have to bring a whole lot of it, but you just bring in enough of it. Just so, I mean, if someone, it's like you can't even see it, but if someone held it up to their, face or something like that, they're, really close, then they can, they'd be able to tell, okay? All right, now where do you apply this? Well, it's the same type of thing. There's light and darks down here in the grassy area, okay? And you just have to determine, is this light green, light, where I'm applying it, okay? Sometimes you apply it in the lighter areas of the grass. Sometimes you're going to apply it, where it's maybe a little bit darker. Like, I didn't retain any of the white up here, so this is probably never going to be dark, next to white, but there's a couple really light areas, and maybe I can apply some of this in that space. Okay, so, bring some of that green up here. The green just looks like highlights, some of their tone, but it is green. The green actually looks pretty good up there amongst the orange, that certain tone of green. So just kind of, peck around up there and see how that, see those little green dots up there? I mean, this is as if you were looking at it from, super close, but that's what it looks like. So it's not some kind of like unrelated thing that really stands out. It's not supposed to be some kind of shocking, contrast and, complementary colors or something like that. Okay, now this one's a little bit of a darker orange here than that previous orange. Well, it's not too much. I guess, I don't know, this one's, maybe it's similar. No, it's a little bit lighter. These pen sets these days, you can get so many different values of different hues. So it's really great having that at your disposal. I am so thankful for kind of the adult coloring book crowd, which got, that got very, very popular in terms of a, certain type of pastime. So, there's manufacturers that cater to that crowd, which is, I don't know, much, much bigger than the rubber stamping crowd. You see them in, every bookstore and whatnot, back when there were a lot of bookstores around, but, these types of pens and gel pen sets and alcohol pen sets, they're all, it really made a lot of media very affordable for all of us. I don't know, I take advantage of that with these types of pen sets here. Okay, now this is a yellow. I don't really see anything. This one's maybe I need to shake it up more. But it is really, really translucent, or it's practically okay, I see it. It's definitely not opaque, so it's, it's like laying down a transparent yellow. So, useless here, okay. Let's get this one to wow, that is so... That's almost fluorescent. Wait, I don't think I want that. Okay. Let's try this one. I don't know, this one's so bright. This one scares me. I guess we have to be bold, though, once in a while, right? Or all the time. Okay, so... Okay, this one looks pretty good. This one's really adding a super bright yellow. And I'm adding it kind of to the top parts of these ridges, okay? Now, I'm going to try to not use it, in the way that I was saying to try not to do it. Remember, I have to say that for myself. I'm going to concentrate this yellow one, okay, in this area and not use it too much out here. I can put a little dot. Otherwise, the whole thing starts kind of vibrating, okay? But let's bring some of those forms down here. So, okay, now where do you put it down here? You can see these little ridges here, okay? And I'm applying it there. See, there's these little grass tufts like that. So see this grass tuft, what you do is you apply it right on the top portions of them, okay? Like this. I mean, I'm not trying to stay right on the, the line or something like that. It's just, that's just kind of a general, see this shadow area right here? Well, it's kind of defining the area in front of it, so, see, I put a little highlight like that. And see, when you hold this at arm's distance, you can see this kind of variation that's happening. And it's subtle, but then when you look at it closely, you can see all these little dots down here, okay? Now the dots would stand out, a little bit too much, like in a... Let me get that flowing here. It would stand out quite a bit down there, but, so I might not use it, like in that area so much. I mean, you could, but just in general, okay? Now, for this yellow, maybe I'll put, some little highlights on, some of this light. That's setting. I'd usually use my white for this too, and I probably should use some, but I'll use this yellow for a reflected highlight as well, okay? All right, that is about it. Let's go with the white now. Okay. Now see, this is an area where I've retained the white of the page, so I'm going to start in here, kind of white, and then I'll kind of lead it out of there, meaning I will vary my application. So I start spreading it out more. Okay, so dissipates out like that. This is probably representing, I don't know, it's like a break in some clouds or something, and there's some sunlight shining right in there. Okay, and we'll put, some highlights in here. I won't put too many because there's not very much kind of white light in the scene, so it stands to reason that you wouldn't have all these white little reflections, or quite as much as if there were a lot of, light. So I'm applying most of this around my light, okay? All right, and there's some light up here, so the white reflected light, which, this little white pen represents. I'll put some little highlights in there, using that lightest tone. Okay, and I'll put some little highlights on my tree, overhanging tree limbs. Okay. On the rooftop maybe. And how about on some of these little rocks down here? And there's some rocks in the grass too, and I'll put a little dot on tops of some of these rocks. It makes them look more kind of rounded and three-dimensional. And then I have some of these rocks down here in my road, and I'm putting a little highlight on top of some of them. And what you can do, if I wanted to, I can take a little pen and put a little shadow at the base of them. So you put a little highlight on the top, a little shadow on the base. That would be something like super detailed. And I don't think they need it or anything, but I'm just saying, if you want to go like super detailed, you can do stuff like that. All right, so that is that. I think that looks pretty decent in there. I mean, it's a far, it's gone far from those initial alcohol colorings in there. Okay, so this is what this looks like. Okay, but let me show you the finishing touches that really, sets this piece apart. Okay, and to me, for me, I should say, it corrects, I don't know if that's the word, but it subdues all of my weak techniques, okay? I'm not good at, colored pencils. I'm not good at alcohol ink coloring, okay? All of you are probably more accomplished at that than I am. I don't know if you use it the same way that I do, but I do a lot of what I do. I don't know, it's kind of to minimize, my inexperience with certain things. Okay, so that being said, I've retained some white in here, okay? But, okay, now, if it was something like an application type of, I don't know, not difficulty, but, this, I don't know, kind of amateurish ability of usage. I know you're probably not believing me on that when it comes to that, but if you look back at my videos, I barely used alcohol inks at all. It might be to like color a building within a scene, dye-based inks or something like that, but hundreds and hundreds of videos of just dye-based inks on like glossy cardstock, okay? But, okay, I retain this area of light in there, okay? And what I'm doing is I'm inking up some white pigment ink here. You can use any brand of pigment ink. It works fine. This one's Brilliance ink. It'll dry faster, but Hero Arts Unicorn works just fine on this, okay? All right, so I'm going to start applying some of this in my light area. So you're reiterating it, but you're also I'm starting light and light. Okay, now I sponged in some color up there, we got some, I don't know, some smearing, some smudging. I don't even see those smudges anymore though, because I've added in more tone and whatnot. Okay, so this white ink, I'm applying it in my light area, but I'm also going into my darker elements. So I'm going up with it, and I'm going down and into a little bit of my trees. I'm not, I'm not going to cover it up or anything like that, but see this, when I'm putting it over some of my leaves too, it looks like the lighting is kind of illuminating those leaves right in here. Doesn't that look like a kind of a deeper space from a coloring standpoint, from a value standpoint, value light and dark, okay? See that? Now, what I'll do is I'll bring it from down here too, and I'll bring it outward like this. So that light is kind of, creeping out from, this little spotlit area, okay? So what it would kind of represent is, there's a little bit of fog or something like that. And this lighting is illuminating a little bit. So see how it's kind of white, around this area? But look at what it does from a textural standpoint, Everything was just so crisp and harsh. But now you have this soft element right in here, okay? Now, because I have this and that right in there, it kind of allows for, pigment ink to be used in other areas where there wasn't any white retained. So let's try to use it a little bit. Kind of right in here, I think. Kind of you can have some kind of at the base of some of these trees, okay? And let's see, like that. If you put too much down, you can always kind of erase it, like that. It'll come right off. The brilliance does dry pretty fast, though, so don't wait like a day and then try to rub it off. You can rub off the hero hues, though, afterwards. Okay, and how about a little bit over here, too? One of the things I forgot to do, too, with my white pen, I'll get to it here in a bit. If not the white, maybe one of my lighter tans. Maybe the lighter tan one, as a matter of fact. But see that little fog back in there? See, it's kind of, that might be a little bit too much. let's remove some of it like this, okay? Yeah, it's about right. Okay, so what I was saying is, let's try some of this. Okay, now I have some tree trunks running through here. I don't know if you can see them right in there. I don't know. I'll show you where they are. Let me just do this right here. So those tree trunks, if I want them to kind of stand out a little bit, then I'll just kind of go in here and redefine it. I'm doing it upside down because it's easier for me to pull like this. Now, in some of these areas here, I'm not sticking to a trunk. I'm just kind of inventing one where it doesn't really exist, okay? Alright, so here's all these little trunks in here. It looks a little bit too crazy, though, okay? Because they're all over the place. So what I do is I add them in there, and, there should be some branches and foliage in front of some, so we're going to add a little bit of or a lot of little leaves and foliage over the tops of, some parts of them, so it's not just a straight, unbroken, little line, okay? Alright, so it looks more like that. See, doesn't that look a little bit more I don't know, dimensional, I guess. You might even be too much, you know. You remove some of it. I don't know why I'm removing it with that, but if you want to fine tune, paint pen, let's see, let me take a little bit of scissor. And you can just scratch, maybe I can make some of these lines a little bit broken up too by just breaking them up with, you just scratch it right off and it comes right off. So you get this kind of trunks going up there, but there's some foliage in front of them by simply scratching away the trunk right there, and it reveals the colors, in the back there. Okay, so I think that looks about right. Assessing now. Let me try something. Let me take a colored pencil and let's see if I can. I don't think this is going to. No, it does apply. It's a little black. I'm kind of weathering the bridge a little bit. I didn't think this colored pencil would apply over that at all. This is black. But do you see how I've colored some of those, those planks right there? Doesn't that look better than just all solid, one tone? It looks a little more aged too, I think. You can hit the little bit of shadow, underneath there like that. And see this on the rooftop here? Let's put a little bit of a kind of shadows being cast by, the trees. A little bit like so. Oh, remember how I was saying you can add a little shadow at the base of some of these. I mean, the alcohol pen would be good for this too, but you can just do some of this right in here. Some shadow work in here. Let's say this covered bridge is casting a little bit more of a shadow, so I mean there's some use the tools that will be the most conducive for whatever kind of mark you're hoping to establish. So, sometimes it's just something like a colored pencil, okay? And a little bit more shadows within our little grassy area, okay? I'm trying to think if this, could use anything else. This colored pencil, I'm shocked, works in here. It's just a Prismacolor. I guess as long as the the wax or whatever is soft enough, I guess it can apply to, just about anything. I don't, you can't apply it on glass or something like that. I doubt, but yeah, it looks pretty good. I'm really shocked. So I'm always trying to learn new things. I guess I didn't think it would work, but why not try it? All right. Yeah. That looks pretty good. I'm able to get a little bit more of a fine-tuned kind of a shading, going on here and there in both object and area. All right, so anyways, I think that is it. So we have our fall type of scene in, I don't know, it's kind of sunset-y-ish. I guess it could be a sunrise too. Maybe it's before the sun goes up or whatever. This could, if this was more of a sunset-y type of thing, I think that would be a little bit more, I don't know, kind of a deeper yellow or something like that, and red's up there. But the thing is, if you go darker, we won't be able to see the silhouette. And that's where we call artistic license, right? So we're just doing things to serve whatever we need it to for, I don't know, for visual, richness. Okay, so what I mean by that is kind of an oscillation of lights and darks. I've talked about this all the time in my scenes, but here's an area of light right here, defined by the separation of its reflected light down here. So you go light, dark, light. Okay, now if we want to split it up even more, we're going from dark, light, dark, light, dark, okay? And that means that, when we're treating something like a road, if we didn't have this light down here, okay, if it was all uniform, like say dark brown, there's less of kind of a visual draw to draw a person into the scene. We like kind of areas of light, if we were out in a kind of an area and there was like a spotlight of light, we're kind of emotionally drawn to these types of areas. So it's a good idea to retain certain areas of light within your spaces, even within these trees right here. That area oscillates between light and dark throughout, okay? It's not as light as this. It doesn't have to be white light, okay? But here's this structure right here. We have an area of light and dark on it, okay? So every area, sky is light and dark. Trees are both light and dark, throughout. It's kind of lighter in the middle, darker on the outsides. Structure, light and dark. Road is both light and dark. And then you see down here, there's areas that kind of oscillate with darker, lighter on that grass. And even right here, it's not all kind of uniform, mono value in there. And even in this little area down here, this is supposed to be water, but I kind of created it, kind of reflecting, I don't know, the warmth of the sky or whatever. But even this short little area right here, that's supposed to be the water area, little stream. There's area of kind of lighter and darker. It doesn't, by darker too, I don't mean it has to go to black or something like that either, okay? Just as long as it's a little bit, there's differences in these areas like that. And what it means for you, when it comes to an application of colors, it's really not something that's harder to do or takes more time. It takes less time to apply less color in some areas, which means that you're just retaining some lights. And it doesn't matter really where you do it, just as long as you do it within those spaces, and it creates a nice visual scenario when it comes to lighting. And it just means that, like I said, it's the retention of lights in those areas. Sometimes it's kind of a medium light against kind of a darker one. Sometimes it's the white light against, medium in there, okay? And it could be a larger area of light or just a real small area like right in here that's just light enough to kind of draw the eye into the scene or card or whatever. And it's not just for scenic stamping either, okay? It could be for any type of visual type of piece. Okay, so anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did, and I like the way it came out, and I learned a lot about media and what can be applied over alcohol inks that I don't know, I just never thought it would work. Especially that black colored pencil being, I could apply that easily over that alcohol ink. And the dye-based inks went over it too, so I don't know. Maybe it has to do with, maybe I've tried it before on glossy, because glossy just doesn't inherently work very well with colored pencils, I just assumed it wouldn't, but learning new things all the time, which is a good thing. Okay, so once again, thanks again for watching, and thanks as always for tuning into the Stampscapes channel.